You're listening to eLearnChat, where talk is knowledge.
Hello and welcome to eLearnChat, our new podcast featuring prominent leaders, shakers and movers in the e-learning and training industry. Your co-hosts are Rick Zanotti and Terrence Wing.
This episode of eLearnChat is brought to you by Relate Corporation at www.relate.com and also by Liquid Learn at www.liquidlearn.com. Hi everyone, I'm Rick Zanotti and welcome to our 8th episode of eLearnChat, where talk is knowledge. Today we've got Mark Fletcher with us from the UK. He's going to be sharing some of his experiences with rapid e-learning development, voiceover work, and just a whole mess of stuff. We'll take a stroll down memory lane a little bit as well. And joining us today is our co-host, Terrence Wing. Terrence, how are you?
I'm doing great, Rick. It's great to be here and great to be in the chat room with all of our a lot of regulars and a lot of new people who have joined us as well. And let me get the administrative stuff out of the way here, Rick. And I'll say bathrooms are located down the hall and to the right. And for those of you that are joining us for the first time, we are simulcasting this show in several places. So you can catch it here at justin.tv /eLearnChat. /Relate Corp. And we also simulcast it on the ISD 2.0 Facebook fan page and on the Liquid Learn website. So those are three places that you can, at any time when we record this, you can catch the live show. And you can catch our recordings at eLearnChat.podbean.com. And I will go ahead and post that address in the chat room. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to use Twitter at the #eLearnChat hashtag, or you can also type your questions into the Justin TV chat room. That's all the administrative stuff, Rick.
And don't forget the bathrooms are to the right or to the left, depending on where you're
right.
standing. All right, well, today we have a special guest, an old friend. He's not that old, actually, but he's been around doing this kind of work for a long time. He's got some great insights on rapid e-learning development. He's a very good voiceover artist. An excellent training manager. We've been looking at his work for a very long time. In today's day and age, 10 years is a long time. He's been doing it longer than 10 years. So please join us in welcoming our friend, Mark Fletcher. Hello, Mark.
Hello, everyone.
How are you today, Mark?
I'm good, thank you, Rick. It's great to be able to participate today in eLearnChat. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Well, that's great. We're glad you could make it. And for all those who aren't sure where Mark is, he is in the United Kingdom. And he is actually near Liverpool. So I think he knows some of the Beatles personally. Is that a fair judgment? Or?
Absolutely, yes. Me and Paul McCartney, we hang out a lot. I'm joking.
You're going to do an imitation of Paul later on, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And we got quite the diverse group here too, because we're based in the United States, but we've got Australia represented in the chat room, and Belgium also in the chat room, and I think that's about all I recognize. But if anybody out there is from another country, be sure to put that into the chat room or Twitter so that we know where you're listening from.
And I believe RJ Hackers has joined us today. He is with Adobe. I believe he's in the Adobe Learning Group again now, which is great. And he's joining us. He's an old friend from Adobe, and I believe he knows Mark pretty well. And he's in San Diego. That's another country altogether.
Absolutely.
Mark, tell us a little bit about rapid e-learning. What have your experiences been with getting stuff out there quickly and effectively?
I think the most important thing to bear in mind when you're creating rapid e-learning is the fact that you want to make sure that your content is going to be memorable, it's going to be meaningful, it's going to motivate people to actually want to go through the course in the first place. And obviously, from a manager's point of view, you also want to make sure that it's measurable. It's the good old 4 M's that Dr. Allen used to talk about.
What were the 4 M's?
The 4 M's were meaningful, memorable, motivational, and measurable. And so just, the whole idea of making sure that the content that you're creating is engaging for the learner. Back in the day when I first started, one of our big considerations wasn't to do with how much content we could put into our lessons. It was more about, how much bandwidth a particular user had available, because at that time we were all still working with 56K modems. Whereas now, obviously, bandwidth isn't an issue, but we still have to bear in mind that, working memory is a very short thing. And so, therefore, making sure that you have very precise and concise learning material is very important.
You and I do go back a long way. We started doing multimedia development for real about 1995. And,
right.
And you're right, 56K modems, ISDN lines were a commodity back then. And I remember back then we were dealing with Macromedia. We had Authorware is what we were using at the time. I think you were using Authorware at one point, right?
Yeah, I dabbled with Authorware a little bit, but the first big company that I worked with as far as web-based training was concerned was a company called Virtual Training Company, VTC. And we decided against going down that particular route. They wanted to have learning content that was a bit like having an online version of a user guide. And so therefore we were using programs such as Camtasia and Hypercam and all other good programs like that.
Yeah, that's great. And also, I remember back then we had we were putting out Fullscreen e-learning back around 95, 96 using Authorware and on the web, and people were going. In fact, Macromedia was saying, "How did you do that?"
Yeah,
and
I
our
can
comment
imagine.
was, "We read your manuals."
Somebody had to.
Somebody had to. I mean, it was all there. It's just that they were recommending 320 by 240 resolution, which is pretty small.
Yeah.
And we said, no, that's too small for e-learning. Let's do, even though we've gone full circle now, we're doing mobile learning where it's 320 by 240 again, or worse. So it's sort of interesting how the industry kind of went back around. The only thing that's gotten better is font sizes have gotten bigger. So I guess that helps.
Yeah, definitely. And also the versatility, of course, of the Flash platform has made things a lot easier, because now, of course, we can include interaction, which is something back in the day when I started, I desperately wanted to be able to include. But unfortunately, at that time, there just wasn't the flexibility of doing it.
No, that's true. Now, can you tell that to Apple, who doesn't seem to think that interactivity is or that Flash is a good thing?
Yeah, it's all HTML5, isn't it, at the moment with Apple?
Yes, but you know what? I know Kevin Thorne on Twitter predicted that Apple will capitulate and they will have Flash before the end of the year, and I probably agree with that. They can't avoid the herd forever.
No, that's right. And let's face it, Flash is such a ubiquitous platform now that it certainly makes sense. My son, for example, has got an iPod, and he was desperate for me to try to get one of the iPads, and I was saying, it's not got Flash, I can't justify it. I would need to have that capability.
But you know what? The iPad is fun. I have one, and it is a lot of fun. It's not bad. You don't miss the Flash when you're on it, though you do wish when you went surfing that you could see the websites that do have Flash, and there is some great Flash content out there, and you can't do any e-learning that has Flash content in it, at least not easily at this point. Though there are some changes, and I know you can cross-compile things, but it'll open up. It has to if they want to still become relevant, considering that there is a slew of new tablets coming out running Android.
Yeah, definitely.
There's probably a definitely grounds for a compromise somewhere too when you look at the amount of the youngest generation and how they are pretty much drunk on the Apple Kool-Aid, where they, without even thinking or doing due diligence on comparing an Apple and a PC, they'll just jump to the Apple because it's cool. It's the the cool thing to have. And I won't deny that it definitely is a popular tool. But when it comes to functionality in business, there's a lot of different considerations that have to be considered. So I'm glad Apple is pushing companies forward to have this debate. But I think you're right in that there'll be a compromise at some point. I think for survival, it has to be.
Yeah, I think that was Steve Jobs' heart pounding when you said that about the Kool-Aid. But
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. But
on,
anyway,
on
coming
earnings
back
day too, so
to
I don't think I have the power to sway their stock price, Eddie.
Coming back to rapid e-learning development, though, I think one of the big things that I've learned over the years, realistically, is that that your e-learning content doesn't have to be award-winning. I know sometimes when you're presented with a project from a client, and it could be in the form of an existing PowerPoint presentation or even a Word document, a 50-page Word document that's nothing more than a user guide. It's very easy to sit there and say, where do I start with this? What is the best way for me to try to ensure that I'm going to make the content meaningful, memorable, motivational, and measurable? But looking at the amount of content, the volume of content that's out there, sometimes it can be quite daunting. But one of the things that I've learned over the years really is that it doesn't need to be award-winning, and it doesn't also need to be all singing, all dancing. What it has to do is make sure that it changes the learner's behavior. And I think that's one of the most important things that as rapid e-learning developers, we need to always bear in mind, that it doesn't have to be all singing, all dancing, but it just has to make sure that it provides the learners with the ability to do the job at hand.
Well, one of the problems with all the courses that quote-unquote win awards is that many times they're designing for the award, not necessarily for the client. It's for the award. And that creates, I think, an issue. There have been some clients that have had very big awards, and the software internally has failed.
Yeah, definitely.
But it looked great. So that's an issue, I think. And of course, the award ceremonies tend to be somewhat political too, and there's always a little bit of bias and a lot of handshaking and a lot of, oh, I know you and I know you. And so, you know what? It's funny. We've never gone for awards, never had any interest in it. We've had pieces that could have probably won some awards. Just not what we felt was important to e-learning, or to at least our clients. And also our clients do a lot of the stuff we do is under NDA or non-disclosure agreements. We can't show it.
Yeah, exactly.
I always tell people, the best work we've ever done, we can't show. We're just not allowed to.
Yeah, definitely.
There's security reasons or whatever else, or just privacy. And we do a lot of banking applications. We're not allowed to show that.
Yeah,
so that's
definitely.
That's not atypical.
And I don't know about you as well, Rick, but one of the things that I really like to do when a client comes to me and says, I'd like you to create this particular e-learning course, is I love to prototype. And I think that's one of the most effective ways to ensure that you can, create the content quickly. Because you then don't have to go through a huge process of doing vast amounts of storyboarding. Obviously, if you're going to be including voiceover, then you're going to have a script. But I really like the idea of using some of the tools that are available in the applications that we use for rapid e-learning. For example, Adobe Captivate, being able to use their text-to-speech feature, for example, to include voiceover within the prototype is a very effective way of being able to get something to the client that they can then review and really bring them into the whole process. Because sometimes I think it's very easy for us to sit back and say, okay, it's now my responsibility to build this course from scratch. And I really like the idea of integrating support from clients, from obviously your subject matter experts, etc. And it just really helps to speed up the whole process. The idea of doing the design, then reviewing it, and then once it's been deployed, even with some of the rapid e-learning tools, you can then review it again. And if you need to make changes based on some of the comments you've had from your learners, it's not going to take you 3 or 6 months to go through and make those changes.
That was worth something there.
And also, I think that, one of the great things about prototyping is the fact that it just leads to more interesting design.
It does. And also, if you have the budget up front and the customer wants to be involved in the development process as far as what they envision and how you can make that happen, again, you have a better product in the back end because they have been more involved. All too often, people create e-learning with no customer involvement whatsoever. Short of talking to the SMEs, they're not really talking to, or they're not showing anything. And then at the end, the customer looks and goes, I hate this.
Exactly.
And it's such a failed opportunity when it didn't have to be. All you have to do is spend a couple of hours up front creating some interface design, maybe, like you said, prototyping some simple things up front, and then the customer knows what's coming.
Exactly.
And
another thing that I've found very successful is, even at a very early stage, show the e-learning course that you're putting together to some real users and get them to provide you with the feedback. I read a very interesting article this week about a games designer from LucasArts, and he was saying one of the things that he likes to do is to let his mother-in-law try to go through one of the games and see if she can work out how the game is supposed to, proceed, and how she's meant to find the various different objects that are built within inside the game, and try to go through that whole process. And sometimes using people who have no idea of the course that you're putting together can be a really effective way of going through and getting through all those little niggly issues that may arise later on once you've deployed the course.
I actually wish they would use his grandmother to look at most website design where you can't read the fonts, there's no contrast, all those little things that. And how many e-learning courses have you taken where the buttons are so minimally small and not located any place that's logical? You have to kind of go around searching for them hidden within the interface.
Definitely.
Or again, e-learning where you've got fonts that are 8-point. A little hard to read. Just little things that make a difference when you're trying to reach a wider audience. I guess if you're reaching a group of 16 to 20-year-olds, 8-point is okay. When you're reaching 30 to 50-year-olds, the eyes aren't as good as they used to be.
You're selling me.
Or even even the considerations going across mobile platforms and desktop PCs. I mean, you just have to consider a lot more today with those issues.
You do. Hey,
yeah,
Terrence,
absolutely. I mean, another classic example is Father Christmas very kindly brought my family an Xbox Connect this year, which was very well received, to say the least. And we've got quite an old television. And some of the text on the screen of some of these games, etc., is incredibly small. So long term, the kids are desperate for me to invest in getting a new TV just so that they can see the text correctly. And you'd have thought that, with today's technology, they'd be able to ascertain the correct resolution, etc., to display text in some of the games.
60-inch sharp Quadron. That's the way to go for games.
Do I get one of those at the end of this, by the way?
In Fast Company magazine this month.
What, Terrence?
Is that my fee?
Terrence,
I was saying there was a great article in Fast Company magazine on gaming and learning and the impact of it. So if anybody's out there at a magazine stand, you might want to pick that one up. Some real good stuff in there.
Yeah, or even pick it up digitally. I think it's on iPads and a couple of other applications. I believe it's on Android too.
Cool. Sounds really good.
How's the
Mark,
chat
when
room
you're rapid prototyping a course, one thing that I find sometimes in organizations is that they get a reliance on a specific format, and when they first have a format, it might be really intriguing to the learner and captivating to the learner. But over a while, if they're still using the same prototype over the course of an extended time period, sometimes that seems to dull down the learning somewhat when there's no surprise for the user. How do you avoid that when you're doing rapid prototyping?
Well, again, I think it depends the way in which you design the learning in the first place. I mean, obviously, when you're prototyping, you're going through those various different design iterations. So if, for example, you do find that a learner, or you get feedback saying basically that it's very not necessarily boring, but it's not hitting all those buttons, etc., then you can still have the opportunity to go through and make all those changes. It's like, for example, a lot of stuff that's said about rapid e-learning, it goes upon the lines of, it's just page turning. But I think, again, that, we need to bear in mind that books, for example, have pages as well. And it's just the way in which you develop the learning to make sure that you keep that level of motivation and also excitement. I mean, one of the things that I love to do when clients allow me to do this is to make sure that I'm using scenarios and building stories, because I think stories just have such a powerful impact upon the whole learning process.
I think it's a great point. Terrence and I are working on a project right now where, in essence, we're doing just that. We're building a story to teach people all about different processes within companies. And the whole idea is, if you could get a story that relates to a whole mess of people, then you've actually achieved a little bit more, and it becomes something that they can find useful.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's one of the key things with e-learning in general, is that, you have to make sure that it's useful. I think sometimes it's very easy for developers to put courses together, especially if you're working as an internal developer. Let's say, for example, something on diversity or health and safety, and you feel compelled to put loads of information in, for example, about policies and this sort of thing. And realistically, those things are great, but they're not necessarily going to change behavior. What changes behavior is making sure that you've got activities inside your actual learning program that relate to the actual job in question. And I think that things such as, rules and regulations are types of content that you can put in a little link down the bottom, or make sure that you make available on your intranet or something like that. But sometimes I think the problem can be that we tend to saturate our learners with too much information, and so making sure that we keep it simple is a really important point as well. When I was a classroom trainer, one of the things we were taught was to keep it simple, stupid, and that particular acronym is something that stayed with me all through the years that I've put training together.
We got a question for you from Leva, and she's asking, have you published on small screens like the smartphones?
I've done a little bit on the small screens for smartphones, but only really some of the stuff that I did recently for Adobe, showing the mobile workflow that's available in Adobe eLearning Suite too. It's something I hope to do more of, but at the moment, it's not something clients are really requesting. I'm hoping that's going to change, because then I can justify getting a tablet.
Right, it's slowly getting out there. And you know what? I think when it becomes a little bit more cost-effective, and when companies see the benefit of it, and again, a lot of times people talk about a mobile learning workforce, but they forget mobile is a key component of that. If you have people sitting inside an office, they really aren't going to probably learn on a tablet. They're going to be on a PC or something else. But too often, they're talking mobile for the wrong reasons. However, if you've got a mobile workforce, you've got, let's say, utility meter readers, you've got postal workers, you've got people who are out in the field, flight attendants, things that are happening in airplanes, ships, railroads, anywhere where you're not tied to a local computer, then all of a sudden mobile learning makes sense. Doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense inside of a corporation when everybody's at their desk.
No, definitely. And I think something else that I would add as far as mobile learning is concerned is I think it's a great opportunity to include content for job aids as well. Putting your job aids in PDF format and incorporating those into the whole mobile workflow can be also very effective.
What I like are the we're getting back to interactivity, are the courses where, these are HR type compliance courses where they try to be interactive. They give you a 1-minute video and then 50 pages of text. Then a 1-minute video and 50 pages of text. And so you wind up in this, you're pretty catatonic by the time you're done. However, you have had some interactivity with those videos.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, in many cases, you get away with just using static graphics instead of having to use video. That's in true. Some of those courses.
Yeah, that's true.
Have another question from the chat room here asking, have you done any efficiency testing of the eLearning that you've done?
No, I haven't, to be honest with you, because like I said before, the majority of stuff that I did recently with eLearning was with Adobe for their mobile workflow. So I actually created a quite a significant tutorial showing how to go from Captivate and into Device Central, etc. So we didn't actually get into any of that. But again, it is something I hope to be able to do in the future.
It seems that I had posted a LinkedIn conversation in one of the chat groups. I forget which one it was, about an article I had written for Learning Solutions magazine on the use of Facebook as a learning solution. And although there were a lot of people that were interested and eager about the content of the article, there was a sort of a subgroup that was really resistant to even the mention of social media in e-learning or for learning without these controlled studies. And I'm just wondering, sure, the controlled studies are definitely useful and we want to do them, but do we want to hold off on some of this innovative technology until we can do these studies? And I was wondering what your thoughts are on that, Mark, as far as the research and where you see do you see the research driving the use of technology for learning, or do you see the eagerness of learning designers driving the technology in that direction?
I definitely see it to be the eagerness of learning designers. I really enjoyed that article that you wrote on using Facebook as an LMS and using the Facebook API for that matter. And I love social networking. I think it's a very, very powerful medium. I'm a real advocate of Twitter, for example, and I'd love to see more companies integrating Twitter-based functionality into their product range. I know that you can download a widget for Adobe Captivate, for example, that enables you to add Twitter functionality into your e-learning courses. And I believe now that there's even one for Conectate, the new version of Connect, which is just great news, because I think that the whole informal and social learning is a very, very powerful medium, to say the least.
That's true. I didn't realize that they had incorporated it or were planning on incorporating it into Conectate. I'm not sure when that's coming out either. Imminently, I guess. Several months or...
I believe that Conectate is either out or it's coming out very shortly. I did see, again on Twitter actually, somebody tweeted that there was a widget type extension that's now available for Conectate, which includes Twitter functionality. And, I keep in contact with a lot of people via Twitter and learn an awful lot. I think it's a great learning tool, and I'd love to see more of that type of functionality being integrated into e-learning courses.
RJ saying that it is out now.
I thought it was, yeah.
It is already out. Okay.
Thanks, RJ.
Good job, RJ.
I wonder if that's rolled out to all of us, because we have Connect. I have to check and see if that new version has already rolled out. That's interesting. Anything else going on in the chat?
No, we have the usual suspects in there and a couple of new ones. So I just wanted to take a moment here to thank the new ones for joining us in the chat room. And so quite the conversation going on. It looks like the conversation is still extending from the PC versus Apple discussion that we had too. And let me clarify something there. I'm not anti-Apple in any way, shape, or form. Apparently somebody had misunderstood that. So I know, boo, get those crowd noises. No, not at all. I think Apple's a very innovative company. The comment that I made earlier was that the younger generation isn't necessarily looking at computer use the same way that we are looking, or older business type population is looking at computer use. So I think as those two generations become more and more relevant, then we're going to start to see some kind of compromise between Apple and PC makers, where we get a little bit more cross functionality between both platforms. But I'm glad Apple's here, because they drive a lot of innovation that forces PC users to rethink the way that they're developing their software, the way that they're developing the PC too. So.
I think the mantra with Apple is "Thou shalt not." Thou shalt not do this. Thou shalt not do that. There aren't very many "thou shalt wills" or whatever. Thou shalls.
So hopefully that at least clarifies the issue. So I know this isn't a show about Apple versus PC. I don't think maybe we'll have that show in the future. I don't know, but. It was something that looked like it needed a little bit of clarification from some of the comments that were appearing in the chat room.
Terrence is a PC and I'm an Apple. Actually, no. I actually prefer PCs too. We have several Apples, but they're okay. They have their place.
Absolutely.
You know, it's really funny as well because when I first started, Apple was the main computer system that I used, primarily because I was involved with graphic design and training people how to use graphic applications. I was teaching users how to get to grips with Quark Express and Illustrator and Photoshop. And then I got into web design and development and teaching that, and then it was Photoshop, Dreamweaver, and Flash. And now I'm into rapid e-learning development, and it's Captivate, it's Articulate, it's Photoshop and Flash again. So it's interesting really to see a way in which a lot of those programs that I started using back in the day, I'm still able to use today. And I think that programs like Photoshop and Flash have just come on so much over the years. It's amazing.
What do you think? One thing I'd love to see is a game engine for e-learning.
I would love to see that, Rick.
I don't know any right now that do that, but that would be so cool. I'm surprised in Flash nobody's really developed one. A game engine that you could actually put your characters in there, have already pre-programmed interactions. People think a lot of the games are done from scratch. No, they use very sophisticated engines to generate probably 80% of the game, and then they do some specific coding as needed. But these game engines are very, very sophisticated, and if we could leverage the power of gaming for e-learning, boy, wouldn't that be fun? And you'd grab the whole new generation, which isn't really into reading as much, but they're much more into gaming and work on a PC. I think that'd be great.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of my relatives attends a autistic school, and in their classes, they've now decided that the best way to teach the students mathematics, for example, is to let them go through some of the games, etc. Because it's it's very visual and it's problem solving, etc. And they introduce mathematics to them in that particular way, and then they actually start hitting the more traditional mathematical style teaching sessions, if you like, once they've got the interest there. And again, I think it all comes down to the whole idea of making sure that it's motivational. And gaming is obviously something that's highly motivational.
Yeah, that's true. Terrence, you've done some work on rapid e-learning.
I have, and RJ and Leva and a few of the other ones out there will be happy to know that I've been doing a lot more stuff with Captivate. So I know in the last couple of episodes I've talked up some of the other programs like Articulate, and I think they all have great potential, and it really depends on what you are using the tool for. And Captivate is a great tool, has great options, and I think in certain situations it may even be more appropriate than Articulate to use, but I can flip those situations around and say Articulate may be the right tool to use. So I don't know if the debate about which tool is better could ever be answered, but I think that as an e-learning professional, it's important for all of us to have fluency in the majority, at least, of the popular tools, because a client, internal or external, may need a project done a certain way, and it may be more efficient or effective to do it with a particular tool.
And one of the worst things you could ever have is a one vendor environment where you have one vendor, one tool, and that's it. Period.
Yeah.
And there's no competition. Without competition, we get nowhere. That's what's been good for the industry. The more tool vendors we have, the better our tool sets are going to be in the long run. And so I'm all for competition. Yes, use the tools you enjoy and like, but make sure that they have some competition, because we all benefit from that.
Capitalism.
Yeah, I would
and
totally agree with that as well. And I think sometimes that the determination of which product you will use is really determined by what the client has. For example, you may have a particular client who already has Captivate. They want you to do the initial design of the course, etc., and they then want to be able to make modifications themselves. And obviously, to make those modifications, they need to have a copy of Captivate, and the same is true with Articulate as well, for that matter. And so I think that sometimes what the client has internally in their organization can also help drive which tool you end up by using. But I definitely agree with you, Rick, that having competition is a really important thing. Because that way we can go to our favorite software vendors and say, we really want to be able to do this, and it's in this other tool, and why can't we have it in your tool? Right. And making sure that they're still pushing the boundaries as far as possible. I mean, for example, I know with Adobe Captivate that you can do an awful lot now thanks to the new functionality that's available with the improvements to advanced actions, and you can really start to build some very powerful soft skills-based simulations now with inside Adobe Captivate. And one of the things I would like to see in the future is just simplifying that whole process, because again, with rapid e-learning development, you want to make sure that you're turning your courses around in 2 or 3 weeks, not 3 or 6 months. And so there's always room for improvement with all the tools.
From your mouth to Shamir's ears.
That's the one.
You heard that comment.
I ping him on a regular basis saying, come on now, when can we have this? And I leave her and others do as well. So we're hot on their tail.
He actually spent a week in our offices a little under a year and a half ago, and we implanted him. So he gets secret messages every night saying, add this feature.
Fantastic. Subliminal messaging. Fantastic.
He doesn't know that. And he's probably not watching right now, but yes, add those features, quick.
Add those features.
He'll watch the recording, though. I think he's sleeping right now.
Probably.
I think it's bedtime over
probably
there.
Is. Yeah, definitely.
That's actually pretty late your time, too, isn't it? About 10 o'clock?
It's about 6:30 now, my time, so it's not too bad.
Oh, you're 9 hours. I think you're 9 hours away from us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
I think Shamir was 13 and a half. So it's quite a few hours more.
And RJ had made a couple of actually there's several comments throughout the chat room there about agreeing with the competition statement, that everybody seems to appreciate that there is competition amongst the authoring tool designers. So, and coming from an authoring tool designer like RJ, that's good to see.
Well, it is good. It's good for all of us, because the more we have options, the more it forces the companies to come up with better options, and we can only benefit from that. If you look at what's happened with Captivate, if you look at a little bit of the history, it was developed originally by a person in Australia, a one-man show, and then from there it got acquired by eHelp. They did quite a good job of cleaning things up and making it better. Then it got acquired by Macromedia, which kind of dropped the ball on it and didn't quite do that well with it. Then it got acquired by Adobe, and there were a couple of so-so releases, and then finally with 4, and now with 5, it's really come onto its own as a very good product. Previous versions were buggy. We couldn't use it before for large projects, only very simple, small ones. But now we can use it for just about anything, and that's a testament to the work of the engineering group and the amount of effort that they've put into it over these last 3-4 years to make it a very viable and good product, and leading product in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think something else that's fair to say as well is the fact that because now we have the Adobe eLearning Suite, we're now able to take advantage of a lot of the great functionality that's available in some of those other products as well. I mean, I think one of the things that really struck me when I first started doing this type of work was the fact that, gosh, without some Flash skills, without some Photoshop skills, etc., I was really going to struggle. And because obviously I came from a web development background, I already had some of those skills implanted in my brain, as it were. And so to see now the way in which they're really starting to get to grips with the whole idea of integration, it's impossible to put everything within inside a single product. I do think one of the strengths of the Learning Suite is obviously that strong level of integration now that we have with Photoshop and Flash, and I think Shamir and the team did a great job in ELS2, eLearning Suite 2, to make sure that level of integration was taken to the next level, as it were. So I think they've done a really good job there. There's just lots of other things I would like to see them to add into the next version. Because again, I think from a rapid e-learning standpoint, especially if you're a single developer, then you need to have some of the skills that are required in many other disciplines as single entities. So if you were doing gaming design and you were using Flash, then that's the only thing that you'd probably end up by doing, and you'd have a graphic designer who would do all your graphic design work. But obviously, if you're just a one-man band like I am, then you've got to have additional skills as well. And sometimes just keeping up with things can be wearing, to say the least, but definitely worthwhile. And thankfully, the programs, I think, anyway, are becoming much easier to use. And I cut my teeth with Photoshop on Photoshop 2.5. And just to see the way in which that program has improved over the years has been phenomenal, to be honest with you.
And you remember in those days, you needed graphic acceleration cards to make it work well.
Oh, yeah,
$1,000,
definitely.
$1,000 graphic acceleration cards. Those are the good old days.
Yeah, definitely. I
changed.
remember being involved with one particular project for a very large cereal company, and they got their very high-spec Mac, etc., and they were tempted to place a security guard next to it because it was that expensive. And, it's amazing to see just how much all this stuff's come down in price and just how much more accessible it is.
I thought that was an Apple requirement back then.
It probably was, actually, at one stage.
Yeah, you shall have a security guard. See, you get one shall.
That's right, yeah. Maybe we could now turn them into an SME.
But it looks like we have our first guest from Taiwan. I don't think we've had any viewers from Taiwan, but WDEVN. And please, by all means, at least tell me your first name. But it looks like he's calling from or chatting in the chat room from Taiwan. So we're reaching all points of the globe on this episode.
And Shishani for joining us. Thank you. I took Chinese years ago. I don't remember it too well.
James is his name. Okay, he just replied back. So welcome, James. Thanks for joining us. And he's been a great contributor in the chat room. So thanks so much. And of course our regulars too. You've got Dawn and Jeff and RJ. Who else do we have in here? That's Lily. So Dave, Landy Dave also. So it's great seeing a lot of the regulars in here, and welcome to the new folks.
That's true. That's great. And thank you all for showing up to this. And we are really coming close to the end of our about 45 minutes here with Mark. Mark, before we sign off, I'd like to talk a little bit about your voiceover work. You have a great voice. You've got that natural English accent, which we all try to have, but it just doesn't sound as good.
I'm available for work, Rick, if you're looking for anyone.
we always keep you in mind. Actually, we have presented you on a couple of occasions, but at that point they wanted, for some odd reason, an American voice. But no, you have a very good voice, and I remember listening to a lot of your training, not only with the VTC days, but when you were with WebAssist, and I thought you really gave a good message, and your voice is good. It carries the training, whatever you do well. What kind of voiceover work do you do?
Well, predominantly I do e-learning, to be honest with you. I have tried to break into some of the other ground, but it's pretty difficult over here anyway to get into the other styles of voiceover work. And I really enjoy the e-learning work as well, because obviously it's something that I'm very passionate about. And I think that passion probably comes across in my voice, and more so with e-learning development than maybe in other things.
Yeah, that's great. But definitely, if you are looking for a voiceover artist who happens to have a natural British accent and who does a very good job of communicating with voiceover, Mark's your guy. Where could they reach you for that? Would it be your blog? Can they reach you through the blog? Or?
Yeah. Yes, they can. They can certainly reach me via the blog. I would be more than happy to answer any questions anyone may have about my voiceover. Send in my show reel, etc. That would be fine.
And that is at macrofireball.blogspot.com.
Yeah, or they can tweet me as well on macrofireball.
Twitter at macrofireball. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, Mark, as always, it's been a pleasure talking with you. It's been a while since actually we've communicated, and actually we re-met up via Twitter. again, which is
Yes, we did.
which is good. It's been a while. We're meeting up all old friends and acquaintances, and I think it had been about 4 or 5 years since we had talked before that. So it was a pleasure when Twitter kind of reacquainted us, and now you know Terrence, and Terrence also has a lot of contacts and connections. So hopefully he can get you some e-learning vocal work or whatever else. But
Definitely.
All right. Well,
That'd be great.
to everyone in the chat room, thank you so much for joining us today. Terrence, as always, a pleasure having you here. And Mark, thank you so much for joining us and sharing some of your experiences with rapid e-learning and really the industry on the whole. So with that, we're going to close down the show. And what we will do is, for all of you in the chat room, we still will be live for another 5 or so minutes. So feel free to join us.
And also,
Sorry about that.
don't miss next week's show, which is Don Pontefract. And I probably butchered his name there, but he's going to be talking about Enterprise 2.0. So that will be an exciting discussion as well.
All right, everybody. Goodbye. Thank you again, Mark.
Thank you.
Bye, Terrence.
Take care, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
You're listening to eLearnChat, where talk